Hi staff, in this video we're going to look at how to do an activation. So to start out, let's take a look at the activation form. Pretty self-explanatory. You need your student's first name, last name, and student number. And then we'll need the course code from MyEd. We'll have a look at that later in the video, along with your course name. Be sure to include your name under teacher, and then the key here is the activation date coincides with what you place in MyEd. Be sure to tick off that you've tracked this in your Moodle gradebook. Each activation needs to be done so. As we move on to page 2, we need a list of the learning outcomes. So if they're just listed by letter and number, you can add those or you can write them right out. Be sure they correspond with your assignments. Number 2, you need to make sure you've ticked off that you have the gradebook attached and that you have the actual activation assignments attached as well. So that one's there. All these last few files will be left with administration. You don't need to include them, but tick it off. And then we need a teacher signature and of course the date of your activation. For your gradebook, make sure it corresponds with the student you're activating, and each of the assignments that you're including for this activation, the marks are entered and you have a current course total for that activation. The example of an actual activation assignment should look something like this. You have the title, your student's name, the date, and then the marks that are being attributed for that assignment that correspond with that grade book we just looked at. But the critical part is that each of the feedback is provided on this sheet, whether you type it in, write it in, however it needs to be done. So as this look in Moodle, we have our student here with each of the grades for those activation assignments. Notice there's not necessarily grades for further assignments. And then we have to track the fact that we're activating. So we'll turn editing on. And as soon as this loads up, it'll give us the ability to click on the rotary symbol to make changes to this tracking. You'll see I've already entered this in here, but basically the key is that the date here for your activation matches what you're placing in MyEd. Let's go ahead and go save changes. And as long as editing is on, that little feedback box is going to provide that input you've placed. But if you turn editing off, you're no longer seeing it on the screen, but it's still there. So in MyEd, you have your course code and course name up at the top here, as stated. Your student won't have any data in any of the terms or any grades, obviously, because they've just started the course. Maybe within 2 weeks they've been in the course. Just double check the start date should be about correct. You're placing your active date in here. So I'll give this a moment to load up. You can just choose a calendar date. And then you can leave % complete and completion all empty. Be sure when you post grades, you're clicking on post course dates, click OK, and then again with the prompt, OK a second time. Other than that, just be sure it's all stapled together and attached in the activation box in the back of the office. Thank you.